My name is Ashley, and I live in a small town just outside Tucson, Arizona. I always believed family came before everything. We weren't rich, but we were close. At least, that's what I thought. My dad, Richard, was the glue that held everyone together. After Mom passed, he raised me and my half-sister, Denise, with everything he had. He always said, "I may not have much to give, but you girls will never doubt how much I love you." When he got sick, I was the one who took care of him. Doctor appointments, meal preps, sleepless nights worrying if he'd make it to morning. Denise? She lived 2 hours away in Phoenix and visited maybe twice in 6 months. Still, I didn't hold it against her. I thought we were family. After Dad passed, we were told there'd be a formal reading of his will. That surprised me. He never struck me as the formal will type. But Denise said he had a lawyer handle everything, and she'd been coordinating with him. I assumed maybe she had helped him get it set up toward the end, and I was grateful someone had the mental bandwidth to take care of the paperwork. The day of the reading, I showed up early. My heart was pounding, not because of the money, my dad's house, a few savings accounts, maybe some old baseball cards, but because it felt like the last page of our story together. The lawyer, a stiff man in a navy suit, opened a folder and began reading. To my beloved daughter Denise, I leave the house, all financial assets and remaining possessions, and that was it. There was no mention of me, not even my name. I sat there in stunned silence, blinking like maybe I'd missed a paragraph. I waited for the lawyer to clear his throat and go, "Sorry, there's more." But he didn't. I turned to Denise. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, I cried harder than I had at the funeral. It wasn't about the money, it was the erasure, the betrayal. After everything I did for him, how could he cut me out? But the thing is, my dad wasn't like that. He would never have done this to me, not unless he was pressured or manipulated. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I remembered something. Something he told me just weeks before he passed. "Ash, if anything happens to me, check the safe in the garage. You remember the code, right?" Yes, Dad. I remembered the code. The next morning, I drove to Dad's house. Denise had moved in already. It had only been a week. There was her white Lexus in the driveway and her boxes stacked in the living room like she owned the place. I didn't knock. I used my spare key. I wasn't there to argue. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but that feeling in my chest, it wouldn't go away. I had to know. I walked straight past her unpacked handbags and designer shoes and headed to the garage. The safe was still where it had always been, tucked behind a false panel in the old tool cabinet. I knelt down, wiped the dust from the dial, and paused. The code was still burned into my brain. Dad's birthday, then mine. I turned the dial. Click. It opened. Inside was a thick envelope and a flash drive. That was it. I held the envelope in my hands for a few seconds before opening it. I don't know what I expected. A second will? A check? A confession? But it was a letter. In my dad's handwriting. "Ashley, if you're reading this, it means you've trusted your gut, and I'm proud of you for it. I don't know how things will go after I'm gone, but I need you to know something. I did leave you something. Everything, actually. You were the one who stood by me when I couldn't stand on my own. The official will is here, signed and notarized. If Denise tells you otherwise, she's lying. I'm sorry it's come to this. I never wanted the two of you to turn on each other, but I knew she had plans the minute I got sick. She took the draft copy to the lawyer before I could submit this one. That's why I never gave her the real version." I felt my chest tighten. My dad didn't cut me out. He tried to protect me. But Denise got to the lawyer before he submitted the final will? That meant the one on file, the one read aloud, was outdated, maybe even manipulated. I pulled out the second sheet of paper behind the letter. It was a signed will, his signature, 2 witnesses, and a notary stamp. And just like he said, my name was on everything. I sat there frozen for a moment. The garage felt colder all of a sudden. All those nights I spent taking care of him, thinking I was alone. And here he was, still looking out for me. But the problem was clear. Denise had already filed the other will. This one? It had never been entered into probate. No one knew about it. No one, except me. And now I had a decision to make. I didn't storm into the living room waving the will in Denise's face. As much as I wanted to scream at her, demand answers, or throw her lies right back at her, I knew better. Denise had always been good at flipping things around. She could cry on command, twist stories, make people question what they knew to be true. If I went in guns blazing, I'd lose. So I took a breath, folded the documents back into the envelope, tucked it into my purse, and walked calmly into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was pouring herself a glass of wine, 10 in the morning, classic Denise, and looked surprised to see me. "Oh, you're still here," she said flatly. "I wanted to look through some of Dad's tools," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He promised me that old pocket knife from Grandpa, remember?" She sipped her wine. "I think I boxed it up. I'll look for it later." There was a pause, a long, tense one. I watched her eyes, calculating. "Hey," I said casually, leaning against the counter. "Isn't it weird that Dad didn't leave me anything?" Her grip on the wineglass tightened. "I mean, maybe he thought you'd be okay. You've always been independent, Ashley. You don't need a house or a trust fund." I smiled. "Maybe, but it just doesn't sound like him, does it?" She looked up sharply. "What are you trying to say?" I shrugged. "Nothing, just feels off. That's all. He told me a few things before he passed that didn't exactly match up with what the lawyer read." Her smile faltered, but only slightly. "Well, the will is what it is. We can't change it now." There it was. She was nervous. I didn't push further. I wanted her to sit with that discomfort, let her mind spiral. Maybe she'd slip up. "I should get going," I said, picking up my purse. "But if I find anything interesting, I'll let you know." I walked out of the house and didn't look back. In the car, my hands were shaking. I wasn't used to playing games like this. But if Denise had lied to a lawyer, filed a false will, and tried to erase me from my own father's legacy, then I needed to be smart. The next step wasn't going to be emotional. It had to be strategic. So I drove straight to the one person who could tell me if that signed will was legitimate. Dad's old notary, Mrs. Carter. If the notary seal on the paper was real, then this wasn't just a letter from beyond the grave. It was proof. The sun was brutal that afternoon, but I barely noticed it. My mind was racing the entire drive to Mrs. Carter's house. She was retired now, but had been the notary Dad used for years. A kind woman, sharp as ever in her 70s, and most importantly, honest. I parked out front and took a deep breath before knocking. When she opened the door, her face lit up. "Ashley, oh honey, I'm so sorry about your father. He was one of the good ones." I nodded, my throat tight. "Thanks, Mrs. Carter. I actually need to ask you something important. Can I come in?" Within minutes, we were at her dining table, the envelope between us. I pulled out the will and slid it toward her, pointing at the seal. "I just need to know if this is real. Did you notarize this for my dad?" She leaned in, adjusted her glasses, and studied the paper. Her brow furrowed. "Yes. That's my signature, and that's my seal. I remember this day, actually. He came over right before sunset. Said it was urgent." "Do you remember if he said anything?" She nodded slowly. "He said he wanted to make sure everything was in order before it was too late. He looked tired but determined. Told me this version was different from a previous draft his other daughter had seen. Said he didn't trust her with it." My chest tightened. "So this is the final will?" "As far as I know, yes. He signed it right here in front of me and 2 other witnesses. You were the only person he talked about that day, Ashley. He was so proud of you. Hearing that nearly broke me. All this time I thought he'd abandoned me in his final wishes. But he hadn't. He fought to protect me, and Denise tried to bury it, literally. I thanked Mrs. Carter and asked her to write a short statement verifying what she'd just told me. She did it without hesitation, even offered to testify in court if needed. With that letter in hand and the will secured in a document sleeve, I headed straight to a probate attorney in downtown Tucson. It was time to challenge the filed will. But just as I stepped into the parking lot, my phone buzzed. One new voicemail. It was from Denise. "Ashley, I know you were in the garage. We need to talk. Don't do anything stupid." My blood ran cold. She knew. She must have seen me on the garage camera. Dad had installed one last year. I'd forgotten. Now it wasn't just about the will anymore. Denise was on to me. And she was scared. Which meant she had more to lose than I thought. By the time I reached the probate attorney's office, my hands were trembling. Not from fear. At least not just fear. From rage. From injustice. From the growing realization that my sister had crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. The attorney, Mr. Daniels, was a calm, meticulous man in his late 50s. He listened closely as I laid out the situation, how my father had a signed and notarized will that never made it to probate, how the one Denise submitted was outdated, and how I had a letter and a witness to back it up. When I handed him the envelope, he took his time reading every page. Then he looked up. "This is strong, Ashley, very strong. If we file a petition to contest the will based on this, there's a good chance the court will open an investigation, and if this document holds up, the judge could declare the previous one invalid." I felt a glimmer of hope. How long would it take? A few weeks, maybe months, depending on how hard she fights back. But from the sound of it, your sister isn't going to just roll over. I nodded. She already called me. She knows I went in the garage. He leaned back in his chair. "That means she's nervous. Good. It also means she might try to get ahead of you. We'll need to move fast." We scheduled the filing for the following morning. But that night, something strange happened. I got home around 6 p.m. As I was locking my front door, I noticed an envelope stuck in the screen door. No postage, just my name, written in Denise's handwriting. Inside was a note. "Drop it, Ashley. We both know you can't afford a legal battle. You want to go up against me? Be ready to lose more than just Dad's house." And taped to the back was a printed photo. A photo of me, sitting in the attorney's office. She was following me. It was subtle but clear. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was a warning. I wanted to cry, or scream, or drive over and demand to know what the hell she thought she was doing. But I didn't, because for the first time in my life I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was thinking strategically, just like her. So instead of backing down, I called Mr. Daniels and told him to move up the petition, first thing in the morning. Then I did something that would change the course of everything. I called the security company that installed the garage camera, and I asked if they could pull footage from the day I found the safe. Because if Denise really tampered with the original will, there was a chance she did more. And now, I was going to catch her doing it. The next morning, while Mr. Daniels filed the petition with the probate court, I drove straight to Desert Shield Security, the company that had installed Dad's garage cameras. I was nervous they'd give me a hard time, but as soon as I showed them a copy of the property deed with Dad's name and mine listed, plus my driver's license proving I was his daughter, they agreed to help. I waited in the lobby while a technician pulled the footage from the week before Dad passed. Right around the time I suspected Denise had handled the legal stuff. When he came back holding a USB drive, he handed it to me with a tight smile. "You're going to want to watch the clip from July 18th, around 3:20 p.m. I thanked him and left immediately. I couldn't bring myself to wait until I got home. I parked in the nearest grocery store lot, plugged the USB into my laptop, and opened the folder. And there she was. Denise. I watched her walk into the garage, alone, in full makeup and high heels, even though Dad was bedridden inside. She looked around nervously and went straight to the tool cabinet. She entered the code, Dad's birthday and mine, and opened the safe. Then she took out an envelope, opened it, read the documents inside, and stared at them for nearly a full minute. Then she smirked and pulled a different envelope from her purse. She placed her version inside the safe. She took my dad's real will and left. The timestamp was crystal clear. The footage showed everything, her switching out the documents, removing what didn't belong to her, and leaving, like she hadn't just rewritten our father's legacy. I sat there shaking, not from surprise, but from the proof. No more guessing, no more wondering if I was being too sensitive or paranoid. She didn't just lie. She committed fraud. I forwarded the footage to Mr. Daniels immediately. Within the hour, he replied, "This changes everything. I'm requesting an emergency hearing. Keep a low profile. She's going to panic when she realizes we have this." But it was too late for low profile. By the time I got home, my front window had been shattered. Someone had thrown a rock through it, with a note taped to it. "You should have stayed out of it." I called the police, filed a report, handed over the security footage, the threatening note, and the prior day's photo. Denise wasn't just losing control, she was getting reckless. But the thing about people like her, when they feel the walls closing in, they always make one last desperate move. And I was ready for it. 3 days later, I stood outside the courthouse in downtown Tucson, clutching a folder that held the last pieces of my father's truth. His real will, the notarized letter, the witness statements, and, most damning of all, the security footage. Mr. Daniels met me at the entrance, calm, collected, but there was a fire in his eyes now. "Ashley, we have everything we need. Stay strong and let me handle the talking. Denise is going to try and rattle you." I nodded, but I couldn't stop my heart from pounding. It wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about character, about my father's name, about justice. The hearing was quick to start. Because we filed an emergency motion, the judge was reviewing both wills and listening to testimony that could determine whether the previous one should be invalidated. Denise arrived late, wearing a conservative dress and fake humility like a mask. She avoided looking at me. When the judge asked why we were contesting the existing will, Mr. Daniels presented everything: the notarized final will, Mrs. Carter's signed statement, and finally, the footage. The judge watched the video in complete silence. So did Denise. For the first minute, she kept a straight face, but by the time she was shown removing Dad's real will and placing her version inside the safe, her face turned pale. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear her swallow. When the video ended, the judge raised an eyebrow. "Miss Denise Harrison, do you have anything to say regarding this footage?" Denise stood slowly. This is taken out of context. My father asked me to handle his paperwork. I was just making sure things were in order." Mr. Daniels stood right up. "Your Honor, the footage shows her removing the final will, not delivering it, not helping, replacing it." The judge nodded. "Noted. Ms. Harrison, we will examine all supporting materials and open a full investigation into this matter, but based on the evidence presented today, this court grants a temporary injunction to freeze all estate assets until the rightful will is confirmed." Denise gasped. "You can't do that. That house is mine. I live there." The judge's voice was firm. "Not until we determine which will was legally binding." For the first time since my father died, I felt like the weight on my chest had lifted just a little. We left the courtroom with Denise fuming behind us, her hands clenched into fists. She didn't say a word to me as we passed each other, but her eyes, they burned with hatred. She was unraveling, fast. Mr. Daniels turned to me once we stepped outside. "She's going to try something, you need to be careful." But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because this time, I wasn't fighting for a house or a bank account. I was fighting for the truth. A week after the hearing, things got quiet. Too quiet. No more phone calls from Denise. No more threats. No more broken windows or creepy photos. For a moment, I let myself think maybe, just maybe, she had backed down. But I should have known better. I was at my dad's house one evening picking up a few of his old keepsakes. The injunction meant no one could legally touch the property until the court made a final decision, but I still had my key. The sun was just starting to set when I pulled into the driveway and saw that the side gate was open. It hadn't been earlier that day. My heart dropped. I parked quickly, grabbed my phone, and quietly made my way around the back. The garage door was ajar. I peeked inside and saw a figure moving, rummaging through boxes frantically. It was Denise. She was in sweatpants, hair pulled back, and she looked desperate. She didn't see me right away, so I hit record on my phone and stepped in. "Looking for something?" She froze. Her eyes darted to mine, then to my phone. "You don't understand. This wasn't supposed to go like this," she snapped. "He was supposed to give it to me. I was the one who deserved it." I kept the camera steady. "You lied. You tampered with a legal document. And now you're breaking into a court-frozen property." She lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but I dodged. "Don't you dare pretend you're better than me," she hissed. "You were always Dad's favorite. I had to take what I deserved." The front headlights flashed outside. It was the police. I had called them the second I saw the open gate. 2 officers arrived and caught her before she could slip out the back. She tried to lie, said she was here to pick up her stuff, but the footage didn't lie, neither did the court order. She was arrested on the spot for trespassing, attempted destruction of evidence, and fraud pending further investigation. It wasn't satisfying watching her get taken away. It wasn't joyful. It was sad. This was my sister, my family, and she had burned every bridge between us for a house and a few bank accounts. 2 months later, the court ruled in my favor. My father's final will was officially validated. Everything he left behind, his home, his savings, even the old pocket knife from Grandpa, was returned to me. But more importantly, his name was cleared, and so was mine. I didn't keep everything. I donated a large portion of his money to the hospice that cared for him and used the rest to renovate the house. Not for me, but to rent out to families in crisis. It felt right. I live in a smaller place now, still here in Arizona. Quiet, simple, and peaceful. People think inheritance stories are about money, but they're really about something else. Loyalty, truth, and sometimes the strength it takes to open a safe, face a lie, and rewrite the ending.